Hey, welcome back, Noggin Notes listeners. I could not be happier to be back recording a podcast. My name is Jake Wiskerson. I'm the host, and it's been a few weeks. We've flown into a pandemic, if you haven't noticed, and that threw things a little bit for a loop. Before that, we had like 6 episodes lined up, and none of them materialized. And I'm a little disappointed about that, but I know that all those individuals will be back eventually recording with me, and we'll get their stories out too. So in the meantime, I have Rebecca Syed Sheriff today, and she is a phenomenal lady. She's a psychiatrist out of the United Kingdom, Oxford trained and world traveled. She's really brilliant. I'm not going to spoil the interview. That's for you guys to listen to. It's amazing. In the meantime, I just want to express how much appreciation I have for the people across the globe who are going out of their way to make things happen in areas where maybe we just took for granted that things would happen. And that spans all sorts of industries and all sorts of innovation, from distilleries that have been shut down and are now manufacturing hand sanitizer, to mental health professionals who have switched to telehealth to keep access available to those who need it, to, of course, our doctors and nurses who are dipping in and out of hospital settings and exposing themselves to this virus. It's just really heartwarming to see such selflessness. And on the other side of that coin, there's a lot of toxicity. There's still political bickering. There's still stone throwing going on. Social media is continuing to be ever more polarized. And if you're stuck in that trap, I invite you to just turn it off. There's very little to be gained by participating in the back and forth of the sniping. And during a time of great stress, one does not need to intake more stress through 280 characters on Twitter, or negativity on Facebook, or rumor mongering, or conspiracy theories. It just doesn't help. So I invite you to just turn it off. Be at peace where you are. This is one of those rare times in life where if you're unemployed and it's not of your own doing, you can sit still and learn how to be still while the storm swirls around you. That all being said, if you're bored, we have Audible to offer. Audible sponsors Noggin Notes, and we're very proud of that. Go to audibletrial.com if you haven't already and find out how you can access their unlimited, unmatched content of audio files and content. It includes audiobooks, of course, but also much more. audibletrial.com/Noggin Notes. You get a free 30-day trial, and you can cancel anytime, and you can even download an audiobook and keep it, even if you cancel. audibletrial.com/Noggin Notes. Go check it out. Get your free audiobook. Keep it even if you cancel, and see what they have to offer. It's pretty sweet. You can custom tailor your selections. I've done it. I really enjoy it. And if you want, you can even get Christian Conti's book, Walking Through Anger. It's one of my favorites right now. He has been a friend and mentor to me for a long time. We plug him a lot on this show. drchristianconti.com. If you want to find out more, it's drchristianconti.com. He's not paying me to say this. He's just a really awesome person who has a lot to contribute to society. You can check out his YouTube channel also. But his book is available on Audible, Walking Through Anger. Check it out as his life's work, really, on yield theory, which is something he developed way back in 1998, and helps people interact in such a way that you learn how to circumvent people's fight or flight responses when you communicate with them, so that you can be heard the way that you want to be heard. Obviously, we're also sponsored by Zephyr Wellness, the company that I co-own with my co-owner, Lindsay Bell, in Reno, Nevada. And I guess that's about it. I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to continue to contribute to society. I'm happy that we're in a tough time because it forces us to count our blessings and focus in on the silver linings that are yet to come. And happy to continue to record podcasts. Thank you for downloading our content. I'm honored. And this is my interview with Rebecca Syed Sheriff. I hope you enjoy it. I think you will. I found it fascinating. I learned a lot. You'll hear me as I take notes throughout the podcast. Enjoy. Welcome back, listeners. Thanks for tuning in. I am really honored to be joined by one of the top minds in psychiatry in the UK. And actually, you spent a lot of time in Australia, too. This is Rebecca Syed Sheriff. She goes by all three names in her publications. And I want you to explain that after you say hi to everybody, because I think it's cute.
Yes, so I think you're being very flattering, but I'm a doctor that specialised in mental health. I'm also a researcher, so we call ourselves epidemiologists interested in mental illness and the risk factors and how we can predict who's going to do, how people are going to do and how we can help. So I'm working clinically and as a researcher in Oxford at the moment, but was previously in Thailand and previous to that in Australia. And the funny story about my name was the accident that happened when I was about to get married and I was publishing one of my first papers. And it was being published in Syed until my new husband got very sensitive and wondered why I wasn't using my married name. So I contacted the journal earnestly and said, please, could you use Sheriff? And there was a terrible mix-up. So I ended up with both names on the publication and that stuck.
And so, Doc, how does it work culturally over there? In America, everybody wants to be known by their degree title. So everybody who has a PhD or an EDD or a PsyD or an MD goes by doctor, and there's all this like role conflation to the public. Do you guys call yourselves doctor? Do you introduce yourself as Dr. Sheriff or Dr. Syed Sheriff, or do you just go by Rebecca?
I go by Rebecca, but I have a medical degree and a PhD, so right. I'm tempted to call myself Dr. Rebecca.
Yes, that's right. Well, and I have 2 master's degrees, so if people really like dig their heels in and go, call me doctor, I'll be like, oh, as soon as you call me double master, which will never happen. But thanks for indulging me on that. So Thailand is important because that is how you ended up on this podcast. And I love hearing stories, and I think the audience does because they're fun. I love hearing stories about international connectivity. You met Noggin Notes founder Safiso Rapinga in Thailand in a very unique way. Tell everybody about that.
So we had no idea probably for the first few months that we knew each other that we both had an interest in mental health. And that is because we met through rugby. So I was playing for an expat team in Bangkok and ended up actually playing a bit for the Lao team, which is a good story because they do great work in their national development squad with Rugby Pass It Back, developing players from the provinces and teaching them life skills.
Oh, that's cool.
So real huge impacts on social and mental well-being as well there. So yeah, through playing in Bangkok and then going over to Cambodia, I met him because he was playing rugby as well. So yeah, on the rugby pitch and in the bar, and yeah, very good to know that he also had an interest in mental health.
Yeah, that's super cool, and I'm glad to have you. So, people didn't tune in to hear about our life stories, though. I don't think so. I want to start talking to you about mental illness, mental wellness, mental health, how we go about treating it. You are a psychiatrist. You do prescribe. You study this stuff. You have certain interests within the field. And I want to open the floor up to have you just talk a little bit, and then I'll sprinkle in some questions as I typically do. Start with your passions, because you got a passion for youth and youth mental health. Start there, and then we can progress.
Well, I think my interest in youth mental health actually comes from a very sort of personal view. And that was that as I was growing up and as friends and family had mental health problems, I felt that there was a huge mental health need, especially in young people, that just wasn't being met or wasn't being met appropriately. So I think when resources are scarce, there's 2 ways of doing things. And certainly in the UK in the 80s and 90s, resources were scarce, and it tended to be that you had to be really quite sick and quite risky, so suicidal, before you would get help. But then the help would be quite traumatic for the person who was receiving the help, because by that point things have got so bad in terms of their mental health or their risk. It would end up being that the police were called out and the Mental Health Act was used, and the medications can be quite severe, with quite severe side effects, especially when someone's been allowed to get quite unwell.
The treatment becomes worse than the illness, it sounds like.
And I think imagining if someone's, is experiencing psychosis, so not understanding the world around them, paranoia maybe, and then at the height of their illness, someone comes, the police come and take them off to hospital, and they're, maybe restrained, don't understand what's happening, give them medication.
Yeah, that's awful.
And that would be very traumatic.
Well, and you and I you don't have COVID, do you? You get COVID-19 right now?
I think I'm just talking too much, and I've managed to catch my throat.
We were talking before we came on about stigma, and something I didn't realize is that in the, I don't know if it's UK broadly or England specifically or where it occurred, but you were telling me stories about how people would hit that critical point because there was no bridge between healthy and extremely unhealthy to treat people who are just moderately distressed. And so it took a while to get to that point of extremely unhealthy. And then once you were like sent away to a hospital, to an institution, often against your will, what we in the US would probably refer to as an involuntary psychiatric hold, which we reserve for very extreme circumstances, imminent threat to self or others type thing. But this was something different. You mentioned psychosis, you mentioned youth, and I drew the conclusion that all contributes to the very negative impression that people have about receiving mental health treatment. It's like, well, you're going to lock me up and send me away to the crazy ward. And it turns out that's not ancient history for you guys. For us, it might feel like that because it was some 55 years ago that we started eliminating the mass institution of people in the U.S. and it really went away in the 80s, which is now 35 years ago. But for you, you're talking 15 years ago even. So tell me a little bit more about that and how you're experiencing it, how the field has progressed, and what's being done these days to normalize the conversation.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I've obviously got this international perspective.
Mm-hmm.
I've worked in the UK, Australia, and different regions in Australia, and actually had a project in Somaliland as well. So, and I can definitely say for sure that different regions have different challenges in their mental health services. Certainly the reason that, I completed my training in the UK and in medicine and went straight over to Australia to do my psychiatric training was because there was a movement in Australia called the Early Intervention Movement, which was doing exactly what I was interested in, which was making mental health services friendly, encouraging people to come early when they were just starting to feel distressed, maybe didn't even reach threshold for a mental health disorder, like we use the terms and diagnoses, actually to say to young people, actually, you might not even have a diagnosis of depression, but if you're feeling low and you're confused and you're not sure what's going on, then come and see professionals and we can start to look. And it wasn't just treatment, it was actually quite a lot of research to see if we could identify how to best help people and prevent escalation of their problems or problems into the future.
What are you seeing right now? Your work now, you're now back in the UK, specifically what is being done and how might the listeners adopt some of this stuff, maybe bring it forward? Because we're actually quite international. I mean, I know that you're going to be listened to because you're probably going to share this with some people. So I know we're big in Cambodia. I love saying that because that's where Safiso originated. He posts this down there, and of course in the U.S. So what are some emerging practices? What are you seeing? What are you doing? What's working? What can people take back and maybe implement into their own lives or talk to their legislators about? That sort of thing.
There's a few things. Certainly my research interest now is I think, what we've learned